It's not the world's job. It's not no one else's job but you to maintain your own peace and happiness. This is about emotional intelligence. This is about staying in your power. When I got nominated for a Grammy, it didn't even mean anything to me. That's how much I was not present. I didn't like that. I had to go through being disappointed, feeling betrayed. A lot of the time, we feel that life is dealing us this bad hand. If you look a little bit closer, you'll be able to appreciate those moments, because what is life without them? The power of music has allowed me to connect beyond time and space. Once you really start tapping into certain frequencies, you're able to vibrate higher. Now fans are coming up to me, telling me how my music has helped them. If I'm gonna do anything, it's like that's the effect that I want. And that's why it's important to know thyself, to get to know who you are so you know who you wanna be.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Know Thyself. Our guest today is a singer, dancer, actor, multi-talented artist. You maybe know him from the OG boy band group B2K, or his multi-platinum selling Grammy-nominated solo artistry, or maybe as the king of Unbothered. He's got a lot of depth and insight to him, and I'm just excited to explore all the nuance of emotional intelligence, what it means to be a man of integrity, and ultimately becoming your best spiritual self. Omarion, thanks for being here, bro.
Hey, great intro. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
King of Unbothered's in the house.
Yeah, when that thing came about, shout out to my fans. I always shout them out. It was kind of a persona, that was presented to me. And when I started really diving in deep, it just, I fit into that,
Sure.
That king of Unbothered.
Yeah. What does that word mean to you? Because obviously words are just symbols, right? And they show an aspect of us or quality that we like to imbibe or embody.
Yeah.
So what is being unbothered? What does that mean to you?
It means a few things. The first thing that comes to mind is staying in your power. What does that mean? A lot of the time throughout my career, it seemed like things were happening and I didn't quite grasp or understand fully why they were happening, what was leading me to, I guess, just to pay attention a little bit more. Like, why am I finding myself in these situations? Why am I dealing with people that want to, so to speak, press my button or push me, into a space where I would maybe do things that affected my life in a negative way. So first things first about being unbothered is staying in your power, not allowing outside forces to kind of push you in a direction that isn't a true representation of your soul, your spirit, your purpose, your mission. Situations and circumstances led me to dive into what that meant. And like I was saying, because of some of the situations that I was going through publicly, being a child prodigy, starting so young and growing up in this game, it's like two things that happen. You're kind of like, a mirror for some people's experience, and then you're also a timeline. You're a timeline to other people's memories, and because I was entertaining so young, I created a lot of memories with a lot of people, So when this concept of being unbothered came up, and I was like, oh, this is about emotional intelligence. This is about staying in your power. This is about being unfazed in certain situations that might at that time seem really embarrassing, seem really like, why am I going through this? It's like that word, that concept, that idea, when I embodied it and took it on, it really made me feel like this is temporary. This is something that, this is not, I'm not going to be worried about this in a couple of days. It made me really shift my perspective and take ownership of everything that was coming into my space. And that was kind of like the overview. But being unbothered is staying in your power, exercising emotional intelligence, and realizing that you have the power.
I love that, man. Yeah, I think sometimes maybe people would hear that word and think, it's a way to stay detached, aloof,
Yeah.
float above
Yeah.
life's challenges. And I think that there can be a deep sense of involvement and just reclaiming your sovereignty and
Yeah.
not letting other people have power over your internal state,
Yeah.
being like self-sourced, and that's a really powerful place to move from, because then
Yeah.
you're a real creator of reality instead of just a
Yes.
creature of circumstance that happens around you. And so, I think I'm really curious to hear a little bit more of your background of what formed you, going way back to even childhood before you even got into sharing your artistry with the world at such a young age, at like 13,
Yeah.
How was being raised by such a young mother, like how was that formative for you at that time? Also being in a household where your father was incarcerated at the time, you didn't really have that male role model to look up to and
Yeah.
look after. How do you, looking back, connecting the dots, how do you feel like that formed you to arriving at that place of being unbothered?
Well, it definitely, shaped me in a way that, prepared me to arrive, to being unbothered. I have to, shout out my mom because, when you're a young mother and you have boys, it's a little bit different than, when you have girls.
Yeah. And she had you at what, 16?
Yeah, she had me at 16. So, I say me and my mom grew up together. My music tastes, the way that I deal with women was, directly, a reflection of her and my auntie and my nana. I definitely salute, the women in my life who has helped me cultivate, my personality and my reality. They helped me shape that, you know what I'm saying? So I think that because my mom was so young, like I was able to feel the freedom of making my own choices. My mom trusted me. I was like definitely one of those kids. And at that time, we played outside. So, I was walking places. I was curious about life, and I never, felt like, my mom never was worried, like that energy never stepped into my space. My mom always trusted me. And I feel now with being a parent, I see how that cultivates confidence and surety and, also a type of awareness that, listening to your gut. Like I remember being in contact with that, at a very young age. So because my mom was so cool, because my mom, was also too a hard worker. She was a hairstylist in the industry. So
My mom was a hairstylist too.
oh, for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's when you do people's hair, that's a different type of service. It's almost like a job and also like therapy. You know what I mean? Like the way you connect with people and you think about the hair follicles and how people are in your head, and you know what I mean? It's a responsibility, you know what I'm saying? So that's why all throughout my career, my hair always looked good, okay? You know what I'm saying? Hair, that's your crown, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure your crown is, looking good. Just shout out to mom for that, you know what I mean? But I believe that, I was able to springboard off the foundation of love, confidence, and don't get me wrong, they weren't always like just championing, me. Sometimes they would tell me like, why are you singing so much? Why are you dancing so much? You know what I mean? Because it was really, it was just something that I love to do. You know what I mean? But I definitely have to credit the women of my life, the foundation, for really just allowing me to find my way and trust in, because she asked me before I got in the group. Funny story, we got invited to a New Year's Eve party, and there used to be this house on Colfax in the Valley, and literally like all the groups would come there. Like before Destiny Child was Destiny Child, B2K performed for Destiny Child. We performed for Black, we performed for 3LW, we performed for all these girls group because there was this place, we call it the Colfax House, and everybody would come. So I was one of the kids that like my mom would ask me, like, oh, you want to go to this? It's going to be a lot of, it wasn't like, you have to do this or you have to do that. You know what I mean? And because she allowed me to be free to find my way and my purpose, I didn't even really realize I was exercising this so young. I was, you know, confidently finding my way. Fast forward to now, I was learning the lessons that were necessary because in my family, there wasn't a manuscript. You know what I mean? When you're 16, there's not a manuscript to be a parent. There's not a manuscript to be an entertainer or what people call a star. You know what I mean? I learned a lot of that along the way, and she really gave me the space to do that. She didn't overparent.
Yeah, what a gift to have somebody to help foster your passions and curiosities and what calls you. And at the same time, there's the challenge side of, so young, and
Yep.
also the lack of the male role model.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, as you stepped into being the man of the house so early and stepping into like your career so early, I think that's got to be such an interesting test challenge to see who you want to be as a man when you haven't had great examples.
Yeah.
And so on one hand, the freedom is great to explore your passions in art. At the same time, not really having as much structure
Yeah.
or examples for that, I'm assuming, was super formative for you deciding who you want to be as a man today. And so
Yeah.
what was your journey just like as a man? What do you feel like it means to be a man and show up with integrity? And how did you learn that on your own?
Well, that was definitely a journey. It was men around, but none of the men really took the necessary time to, I guess, understand how I receive information. And I think that I'm even learning that with having, my son and speaking to him a certain type of way. Like there can be men around, but that doesn't mean that they can be influential in your life or that they can give you, the information that you're looking for to help you to grow. My dad was in and out. We have a great relationship now, but I see the importance of a father, of a man, not just in our industries or in our lives, but just period. The purpose of a man. What is a man? A man is a protector. A man is a provider. A man is a conduit to understanding, how to show up in spaces maybe where you're not welcome. There's so many things that I can say about the importance of being a man. And, fathering my own son, and because there's various styles of fathering, you know what I mean? Depending on who, the student is, for me, it became integral later on. I end up finding, as I would call like some OGs or some elders. They came in the latter part of my life, but seeing how important it is to have integrity, to keep your word, that's really, a major thing. I'm gonna just say this raw, you know what I mean? Because this is all of the strong men that I respect, that have shown me things. As they say, stand on business. You got two things. All you have is your word and your boss. You know what I'm saying? And you can't falter on any, and I'm not going to elaborate how it's not, the concept of the genitals is like this strong thing, it's just about showing up and really meaning something, and shout out to all my, my OGs. Michael Beckwith happens to be one, Scotty P, my trainer and head of my security, Sai Guru, you know what I mean? He's someone that really showed me the power of, inner engineering and like how there's readily tools available for you to help yourself daily with certain practices, so I have been gifted later on in my life, with some powerful men that have shown me some things. And also the importance of brotherhood because, I grew up with my brother and we pretty much raised each other. So seeing areas where, I always tell people like I had to pay for my lessons, and that was kind of like you said, that other side of not having a male figure to say, hey, wait a minute, oh, you don't have to look at it like this. Someone that I actually respected to listen to, and not someone that was just manipulating me, or staying close to me for their own personal benefit. Because, that was a lesson that I had to, get to. And it's funny when people say, well, you being too nice, like, there is no such thing. It's just about who you're dealing with. It's just about how you're being received. And see, a man, shows you that in a different way. A woman can definitely tell you, look out for that. Look out for this when it comes to a woman, or a girl. You know what I mean? But men have a different way of communicating and identifying, with people's character and what they do. And I had to learn a lot of lessons, on my own, because, I didn't have that elder, or I didn't have that person, to say, there's a different way, and that's why I think conversations like these are so important, because, if you can, create a brotherhood that's strong, you know what I mean? But if you can have an elder, if you can have someone that you listen to, that you respect, that you appreciate, it's like you could definitely get some answers to the test, and some obstacles you maybe can bypass, even though, in this life, everything is designed for you, where you find yourself, the information that you have to extract from, the lessons, we're not going to call them lost, you know what I mean? Or you lost anything, or you're losing, you know what I mean? It's important information for you to receive. So because, now I'm in a position to understand fully why, I may be attracted to this kind of, man, or, my elders are, men of integrity, that also speaks to my personality. I'm able to understand how I want to show up. And being integral, standing on your word, that is the epitome of a man.
Mm. Those are some great names. Love Beckwith, Sadhguru also.
Yeah.
Man, we are really in a lack societally, culturally for elders. And, we have these relationships online we can build, which is great.
Yeah.
But the lack of having those in-person connections, I think, is really, detrimental to society.
Facts.
As you came into an industry and a culture where it's so easy as a man to hide behind a mask or a persona and not be honest, take accountability.
Right.
Do no harm, but take no shit,
Yeah.
but like, it's easy, especially in relation to women, just being in that space where you have so much available to you, so accessible,
Yeah.
and a culture that is like normalized. It's really interesting to see how you've had like the decision to be a man of integrity, to go on periods of celibacy, to like be able to give up things, to grow up, and so I think that's really amazing, is what it serves as a role, as a role model, who you decide to show up as in your own family life and business and relationships is just an amazing example for others to be able to see that and be like, that's an option.
Yeah, it's an option. You can tap in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's comfortable to conform to how everybody's acting around you,
Yeah.
but later down the line, it's hard when you're not being who you actually are, and when you reverse it, where it's hard to show up and work through what you need to work through, but then it's easier when you actually can be who you are in the world. And so, when it comes to being a man, I know you've talked, at length also in your book, in relation to your vital life force energy and
Yeah.
sexual energy. As
Yeah.
somebody who's made a lot of like sexual music,
Yeah,
and is
yeah.
in that industry, in that space, how did you come to celibacy as a man? 3 years, for 3 years, right?
Well, wow.
Yeah.
That was an interesting time. Being a dancer, always being a dancer, you listen to your body, you know what I mean? And it's interesting that at that particular moment in my life, I kind of took it on as a challenge, they kind of spooked us out when we were younger. They told us all of the horror stories of the other groups and celebrity, and famous people when they were out on tour, some of the things that could potentially happen to them. And it was always this like this or that thing. Like, do you want to have a career or do you want to be out here making babies? And we like, huh? 15, 16, we not thinking about that, you know what I mean? But it's a real thing. It's a real thing when you go out on that road, and you meet people and, you talking about making love and you talking about sex, you kind of call that energy out to you. You know what I mean? So when I decided to become celibate, it was because I was really just searching for something more, something more for myself. At the time, I was practicing Christianity, you know what I'm saying? And it was just an interesting time. I was like really studying my Bible, and ultimately, like I said in the book, it wasn't for me, but it allowed me to kind of, step out of this world and have the responsibility of being a sex symbol, and being a young adult. And actually, in hindsight, it was preparing me for like my contribution to music, me being integral in my words and what I'm saying, not having to really live a double life, and at that time of being celibate, it's very weird for some people. A lot of people would be like, oh, he young, he on top of the world, he just put out an album, his #1 album, like you ain't out here fucking these hoes, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, nah, it's more to life than that, you know what I mean? And by no means, I'm not here to judge anyone, because we all have our journey, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just found myself in that position of wanting to, understand my energy, give myself time to grow. And also I knew that, if I could control 2 areas of my life, which is food and the urge of sex, then, nothing can stop me, because as a man, we have trouble. We have trouble, in those areas. We can have trouble in those areas. And I love women too, you know what I'm saying? So being intentional with that, being upfront about where I'm at, you know what I mean? That all came along with it, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was that was an interesting time right there. And then come to find out that Lenny Kravitz has been, celibate for however long. I'm like, wow.
That makes sense. That dude's glowing.
You feel me?
People
That's
who
a
are
different glow.
Yeah, when you like harness that energy in, you just start to see, like, you just start to radiate
That's facts.
life. Yeah.
That's facts. That's facts. Yeah. And one of my other spiritual teachers, he was telling me how he's been celibate, for like 8 or 9 years too. Shout out to Gano Grills over at Galacticus. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm talking about, And another word that I wanted to highlight was accountability.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I did forget to say just about the elders and the older people that I speak to. They don't have no problem being like, okay, yeah, that was my bad. And I thought that was cool, because you don't see that a lot. You don't see a lot of men taking accountability for things. They kind of brush over it, But yeah, man, celibacy, I believe that you have to be called to it. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's like, why are you doing it? You know what I mean? But that was an interesting time, and it was a great time. I'm glad that I got the chance to do that.
Yeah. I find it so, there's this limb of yoga called pratyahara, which is like abstaining from senses, fasting for food, celibacy for sex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to give up things when you're not tested or when things aren't so available.
Yeah.
No one wants to have sex with you. It's not that hard to not have sex.
Right, exactly.
When it's so available and you make that decision, you're going to be tested repeatedly and you're going to really show up and see what your resolve actually is within that.
Yeah.
And so as you made that decision, which I know is probably tough at the time, and of course, there's many paths to the same ocean bed. There's many ways to find that true vibrancy, to know yourself. Sexual energy happens to be one of the most potent forms. It's why we're all here. Harnessing that energy really allows a lot of creativity to open up.
Yeah.
and
That's
for you to
facts.
harness those distractions, so many different things.
Yeah.
What did you feel shift internally, like around your clarity of mind and how you felt internally? And then when you started to attract because of that, what did you feel like really shift because of that period?
My connection to, the things that I were calling into my life and why. I was able to clearly see, listen to that inner voice differently. My judgment wasn't so clouded, you know what I'm saying? And I was okay with that. So during that time, and then also too, my relationship with the universe, with the proverbial God, even though I know that, that is within us in our scope, you know what I'm saying? We are gods within ourselves, having the opportunity to choose how our experience is. Um, it helped me come into that, you know, um, unencumbered of, like you said, this is like droplets of a vast ocean. And then it's like once you start doing your research and you see how it's all relative and it's the same, it might have a different name, but it serves, the same purpose energetically. You know, that's what it allowed me to come into. And I think sometimes, for me, with my experience with religion, it kind of cuts you off from being able to experience and realizing that everyone is kind of in that same space. And you really just have to do the self work in order to realize that actually there's many ways, and, a lot of the things that we think is wrong is actually not, So that's what it really opened me to have less judgment, more understanding, and more appreciation and gratitude, and how you can do certain things for yourself to, I don't want to use the word be in control, but you get to say so in how you feel about the natural things that occur.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't have conscious choice over your life if you're so compulsive with in regards to all things. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, food and sex being some of the two strongest pulls that we have.
Yeah.
That and probably money is like
Yeah.
around there. I've heard you talk to, and I felt this so strongly in my own journey too, the difference between joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
Because you can go pleasure seeking all day and it's pleasant. It's pleasureful,
Yeah.
of course, obviously, in many forms. But I've found, and you see this in like, certain athletes where there's just so much of that, especially sex available
Yeah.
to or eating out every day at different restaurants. There's can be a lot of pleasure in that, right? And I'm not saying, that it's not okay to sometimes dip your hedonistic toe in these different experiences of life or whatever, all in balance, right?
Yeah.
But I often find a lot of those individuals can't find joy in their life. Like they can't find pleasantness within just sitting alone in a room,
Yeah.
and that's tough. So what do you feel like the difference is between joy and pleasure?
It's interesting because we always talk about this. We always talk about, what was it? It's serotonin
And
and
dopamine?
yeah,
Yeah.
and how, the difference.
Yeah.
It's almost like, when you get, and it's funny too, as it relates to success too. We're building up for this moment. We're rehearsing. We're getting ready for this show. And the moment is like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I feel like dopamine is, And I think we all have to be mindful of that, because it's something that, it happens so fast. It's like you don't even really get to enjoy it, you know what I mean? But once you get in the mix of that serotonin, you know what I mean? You do the things that really allow you to feel and sit with it. I feel like, that's what joy is. Joy for me, outside of really fully understanding through my experience that it's my choice, it's almost something that, like when people be like, oh, okay, well, if you had to transition, like how would you want to transition? I would want to transition in joy. You know what I'm saying? I would want to be happy knowing that, I did all I could, and when you arrive to understanding that there's a difference, you choose better. You know what I'm saying? And joy is just, it's such a potent thing. It's, my nana, she passed away 2 years. This is probably, the most important in my life and my experience. You know, just she was the first person to touch me. She was a doula when my mom, had me. So we have a really deep connection. And when she transitioned, she showed me, a lot about life and how, even when you transition, there's still ways to stay in contact. There's still ways to, feel that love. And when you're intentional about your relationships and people do transition and pass on, you're not sad. You can really feel the full extent of love in a relationship. And she also helped me come to a place of joy, even though, she's not here physically, because through death, a lot of people get sad. A lot of people get, boggled down that they're losing their loved ones, but you're not. They are always with you. And when you really do your work, then you realize, we all decided to be here at this particular time to have these conversations, to raise this type of awareness. Joy becomes then a different thing, and it's funny. I think about this thing every time I see Sadhguru, and I look at him and he'd be like, I'd be like, what's up? What's up? You good? And he's like, man, I'm blissed out. He be on his bliss. He be on his, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, we all could be like that. We don't always need these outside things in order to fulfill ourselves. Joy is one of those things that you can choose and you can tap into that energy that is infinite. And it's not, something that's temporary, like a high or like, drugs. You know what I'm saying? Choose joy, y'all.
I love it. Yeah, man. It's so good. And I like how you brought up it's the same thing in regards to instant and delayed gratification and serotonin and dopamine in regards to success with your career.
Yeah.
It's always going to be fluctuations. There's going to be big moments, but our life isn't comprised of mainly big moments. Like those are blips of time in
Facts.
in the timeline of our life. Our life is consisted of picking your kids up from school, like the mundane moments, cooking food, eating, being with your family. And so it's like, do you want to live your life for the 0.1% or the 99.9%,
Period.
And so how have you come to change what you see, like how you value yourself as a human being and also in relation to self-worth when the externalities of success, fluctuate with your career, when you have a number one and then, there's downtime or like,
Yeah.
How do you see yourself how do you value yourself and like, how do you come into relation with self-worth?
Well, I definitely keep a daily practice. That is something that, I would advise to all the men out there and young men, keep a daily practice, that allows you to tap into the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. I do that with working out every day or dancing and moving my body, or, I'll do some breath work. I think having a schedule has allowed me to stay grounded and also just realize that, like you said, life is it's ups and downs, it's peaks and valleys. And really what we experience more than anything is those downtime. So you have to make sure that you build practices that allow you to still enjoy your life, you know what I mean? But know and realize and recognize that, this is the cycle of life. This is not the success of life, or this is not, these moments that we want to, kind of recreate in our life to quantify our life, even in purpose, you got to work out in the gym, and sometimes in the gym means reading books. Sometimes in the gym means learning who you really are, when your family dynamic, finances, being able to maintain a stable life so you can have these moments of reprise or a moment to go hiking, like everything can't just be. And this is something that I had to really arrive to because I started so young. I didn't understand the power of like booking my own, getaway until 2019. That's like the first real like vacation I ever took in my whole life, because I've been a workhorse and I've been working since I was younger, you know what I mean? And I saw how much that affected me, you know what I mean, with getting frustrated with work when, work wasn't what I wanted to be, or at the volume at, and then having to renegotiate things and my price and my value, like just understanding that that is in, the scope of my own power. Like, no, I can arrive at any job and no one could tell me what my value is, so really just being intentional about understanding where I'm at in life, and then also maturing. Maturing had really helped me understand that going slow is going fast, and being able to really be present in all of the moments. Because, I was just telling my boy this when I got nominated for a Grammy, it didn't even mean anything to me. That's how much, I was not present, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I wanted to, even though it was a nomination, and it wasn't that I won one, but it just was that, like, I had so much on my mind at the time that I wasn't even able to be present. I didn't like that. You know what I mean? So life has definitely showed me the importance of, taking time for yourself, enjoying your own company, showing up and giving people, what it is that you want within yourself, the importance of that in the workplace and everywhere you go, even the grocery store, you know what I mean? Just living in a way that's purposeful. Those ups and downs has gave me a great sense of value. And I understand even with, my music, all of the art that I share and make myself available to, that even in that, I have purpose. And it's not just about, now we want number ones, don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? But this season that I'm in my, entertainment experience, I've arrived to the point to where, now fans are coming up to me and people that have appreciated my music are telling me how my music has helped them, through certain situations. And, if I'm gonna do anything, then it's like, that's the effect that I want. That could be one person, it could be 100,000 people to arrive to that point to where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, the work is working. I'm doing exactly what I need to do, and it's not just about one thing. It's about this life experience. So, being able to look at that, being able to appreciate those down moments, as we would call them down, maybe we should call them plateau, you know what I'm saying? Because people think that it's an up and down thing, but it's really it's a rising thing, you know what I mean? And we just arrived at different plateaus. Maybe sometimes we have to go back, to realize and recognize some lessons we may have, like, forgot. Because that's definitely what the Millennium Tour was for me. Sidebar, when I went on the Millennium Tour, and I speak about that in the book as well, it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but the universe propped this opportunity up for me to be able to go back and remember, and that's what life is. And I'm realizing it more and more. A lot of the things that we are already innately in contact with, we've always been in contact with. We just had to remember, you know what I mean? So life is a grand remembrance. And I'm so, happy to be in this position, because I remember people would be like, why is he so happy? Why is he dancing all of the time? You know what I mean? And I just realized now, like, yo, joy was just inside of me, and it had to move around. It had to let loose. It had to find out things. It had to go through, being disappointed. It had to go through feeling, betrayed, and that's what my journey was. You know what I'm saying? And I'm happy to be able to go through this experience because, without that experience, there's no information, there's no testimony, as they say. There's no realizations. You don't come to nothing. You gotta go through some things. And life is just powerful like that. And that's why it's important for platforms like, yourself to know thyself, to get to know who you are so you know who you want to be.
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And there's so many tools that you mentioned some of them in terms of yoga, breathwork, meditation that have allowed you to unlock really how you want to show up intentionally in your life.
Mhm.
Because we're often so just living life and being blown by the wind and like what comes our way. And we haven't decided a vision of the future that we want to create for ourselves in any field, and mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, sexual,
Yep.
relationship, social, all of it,
All of it.
like asking yourself really, what do you want? And you can't really hear the answer to that when it's so noisy.
Facts.
And so I know yoga, breathwork, meditation have been great tools for you to cultivate that clarity. When did that come in? And I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that for you.
Yeah, so I remember after I had my first child at 30, and then my daughter came like a year and a half after that. After my daughter came, and then my nana passing, it was like a lot of things going on that was really making me ask myself some tough questions. You know what I'm saying? And during those times and those moments, I really started to figure out like, okay, I need to do something different. I need to, change up things, and I need to do some research. I need to read some books. I need to dive into myself. I need to ask myself, why do I keep going through these certain situations? So I would give all the credit to the kids. It's when my babies came when I really started looking with, the magnifying glass. Because what do you do, as a young man about to be a parent? You have to prepare, for your children. You need things to be able to provide for them, so it stops being about you in that sense, but then it becomes more about you because you have to be in, in a position spiritually. You have to be in a position emotionally to be able to make certain moves. And a lot of the time, this is where people get stuck at because they end up doing things for the sake of their kids. And if it's an unhappy thing, it's almost like a prison sentence. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like something you end up keeping up because it's a choice you made, not really taking the 360 or overview of what's most important for you to be a great parent. You know what I mean? And that's taking care of yourself first, you know what I mean? And making sure that you are ready and prepared to be supportive, in a way that is, good for a child. You know what I'm saying?
They're always listening, huh?
And they watching.
Yeah.
They watching like with the hawk eye. They're you. And also, it's a beautiful thing, when I'm able to like look in my children's eyes and see myself, so then it motivates you and it helps you become something more than, you maybe would have been without them. So I gotta salute my kids, for motivating me to step up and take it to a whole nother level. And even still now, the challenges of communicating and being able to talk with them, on a level that they can understand, because as their father, I have certain duties. I have a certain job. My position is different from everyone else's, including their mothers. You know what I'm saying? So, even having consideration with our differences, and our different styles of communicating, still being able to like talk to my son a certain type of way and be like, hey, you can't do that. You know what I mean? I never would have thought, you know what I'm saying, that I would be basically talking to my future self, because that's what your children are. They're this combination of you, in different, things that you may have not got, in your life experience or received in your experience. It's like they're you times 10. So it's like you gotta be intentional, you have to be thoughtful, you have to be considerate. So shout out to my babies. I love y'all.
Yeah, I could only imagine. That's such a potent reflection to see.
Straight
Obviously,
up.
they're their own being, and they're always recording and watching subconsciously, being programmed by what's around them and how you decide to show up. And so, such a big mirror. I could, imagine.
Yeah.
I'm excited one day to experience that.
Yeah, man, you gonna love it, man.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gonna love it.
in the right time.
Yeah, oh no, take your time. Take your time, man. Cause you go through a whole just type of evolution. Anytime you put someone first.
Yeah,
Anytime you put yourself first and then you put someone else first. You know what I mean?
that
So,
true, selfless, unconditional
yes.
love.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like no question.
Right.
What you need. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's a different version of you, that only, love can really call. You know what I'm saying? Like the depths of love.
Yeah.
Like you thought that was love, like you and your girl, you know what I mean? Unless she just has a really special way of like working with you, you know what I mean? That childlike love is different.
Yeah.
It hit different, because it really is not judgmental, and it knows no harm. It knows, it's all of these things you end up building later.
Yeah.
If your kids is mad at you, it's because of what you did. You know what I'm saying? Or what you didn't do. You know what I'm saying? So
What's been the journey with that, and also your own journey, how your mom fostered your curiosities at such a young age, now you having the opportunity to do that for your kids. I heard in your book you mentioned that you feel that the things that call you are meant for you.
yeah.
And I think that as kids, like we are so intelligent and connected to ourselves. And then the education honestly like puts us into this kind of intellectualization and
Yeah.
doesn't foster a lot of the creativity. I'm a big fan of Montessori and Waldorf schools that, say that you really shouldn't be focused on developing the left brain of a child till like 7,
Right.
I'm just curious, in kind of the wider umbrella of how you feel the things that call us are uniquely meant for us to explore, and then that becomes the means in which we discover our purpose and how we can like really be of service in the world and find our gifts.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think the same way, and my kids go to a creative school like that. So they're, it's a small community of creative kids that learn different ways to be able to express themselves. Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting now because like my son, like he was playing soccer first, and I don't know, it's like soccer is bigger than ever, or football is bigger than ever now. So he's a Ronaldo fan, and he was doing this whole soccer thing, and then it switched, then it went to basketball. You know what I mean? So now he's like all the basketball, and he's telling me, he's like, yeah, Dad, I'm gonna have a soccer championship and a NBA ring. And I'm like, wow, it's just so, creative, you know what I mean? But I feel like really allowing a child to naturally see what they arrive to. And it's funny because, see, I feel like he wants to play sports, even though I understand why sports are so important, just for cognitive reasons. When you see a person's speed, you're a young man and you start getting competitive and you start looking at, oh, wait a minute. So okay, he went to the right and then he went to the left. I think that those were like, for me, my earlier development understanding to, like, connecting with people, it was through sports first, you know what I mean? And then I arrived to music. But my son, like, although he talks about sports, every time he comes in the house, he'll play the piano. He'll play the piano. He wants to make a beat. I'm doing vocal lessons, he's singing, they upstairs, same thing with my daughter. So I feel like, as long as you create an environment where the pressure of doing one thing, like which you and I both know, that a lot of cultures, force their children into certain professions that don't fulfill them,
It's what they want.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're going to be a doctor for the fam, you know what I mean? Without them taking any natural curiosity towards it. I took a page out of my mom's playbook, and that is allowing my kids and allowing myself to kind of be free to create, free to fall into different things. I'm even finding still with entertaining today, because I ask myself many times, like, why am I still doing this? Is it just like a little, like to perform, or like people to scream at me? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's so much more for me, so I want to impart that to my kids
Yeah.
too. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I'm curious to dig a little bit deeper there.
Yeah.
Like, as what you started as this creative passion, and, you're such an amazing dancer and singer, and what have you learned about the power of music and sound and these arts to heal,
Yeah.
I feel like music is the one thing humans have not messed up,
That's true. That's
it's
true.
got so much power in it.
Yeah.
I love it. And when you think about the power of music as it can serve as a bridge for connection and
Yeah.
coming together,
Yeah.
how have you evolved your perception of music?
Yeah, well, the cool thing, like I was saying about still being able to explore is, music has so much depth, so many genres, so many ways, to do it. I definitely have an appreciation for it being a connective tool. And also, once you really start tapping into certain frequencies, you're able to vibrate higher. You're able to maybe see things, that you wouldn't normally see listening to certain music. The power of music has allowed me, I always say this, has allowed me to connect beyond time and space. There's people in other places, that's on a completely different time zone. I would even say in the future. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're here in LA, and like people are, almost, 20 a day ahead. You know what I mean? Like, that's the future, y'all. Y'all believe that, right? Yeah. So still being able to like just realize that music has been, a springboard for me to travel the world is something that I will always honor. It's something that I will always appreciate. And, music is such a powerful tool. And music is not something that you play with. When you have been given that gift, you actually sit in that seat and you take responsibility for it. So music has definitely been a conduit and something that has taken me out of the thought process and understanding of even my own culture. You know what I mean? I'm able to go places. I'm able to learn things about people. And that's what this whole life experience is about. If you're not collecting data, having new experiences, then it's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Are you just here for the party or whatever? You know what I mean? Like the party has to stop sometimes, and then we can keep the party, keep going. You know what I mean? But music has definitely been, a powerful tool for my life and my experience.
It can be such an incredible tool to uplift our vibration. At the same time, anything can be used to lower your vibration too.
Yes.
So how important do you feel like it is to reflect on what is our sonic diet,
Yeah.
and how, a lot of music programs us negatively, right? Like our subconscious is always on record.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly listening to disempowering words and tones, that has an effect on us.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it's like, like we're all having these conversations now, about the importance of what we're replaying in our mind over and over again. Manifestation has been the other part of that. If you want to manifest things, you have to be in a certain mindset. And I think it's so cool that we, get to speak about what we love, as far as music goes. So I would definitely encourage people to make sure that they are, keeping a healthy sonic balance. You know what I'm saying? I get it. You want to turn up when you go into the club. I get it for sure. You know what I'm saying? But just know that 808 is, it's addictive. You know what I mean? It's addictive. It can make you do some things. You know what I'm saying? Unless, it's in some beautiful R&B. Nah, I love hip hop, and there's definitely an area of conscious music.
Yeah,
You know
for
what I'm
sure.
saying? But yeah, like, for me, it's always been about, and as I've matured, I've had more of an appreciation for like instrumental music, you know what I mean? Like not just words and song, you know what I mean, but also beats, you know what I mean, rhythms, you know what I
Piano.
mean? Yeah, piano, you know what I'm saying? So I would definitely encourage people to just explore, find new music that you like, you know what I mean? I'm thinking about Brazil, you know, like Brazil is one of those other places that understands music, you know.
I'm going next month.
Oh,
Yeah,
congratulations.
first time.
I haven't been yet. And they're like, yo, come over here, Omarion. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
dude.
I'm coming. But Brazil is one of those other, their music, like, is just on another level. So yeah, I would encourage people to like, yo, make sure you keep your sonic diet up to par. You know, I'm not saying don't have a good time and listen to Future, you know what I mean? But I'm saying like blend that in with some, you know, some instrumentals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Some jazz, you know what I mean? Some classical music. Like you'll be amazed at what it does to your mood, you know, and to you as a person. You know what I'm saying?
When it comes to reinventing yourself musically, how have you found the courage to explore new creative outlets or genres? Like you've been in the game for a while, you know, like what, 20 years plus? So how have you had the courage when in the studio not to just go back to what's comfortable or what you have done, but
Yeah.
allow what wants to emerge in a new type of music or exploration come through you? Like how do you really listen to that, have courage to go down that path?
The magical tool that I use is vulnerability.
Hmm.
That's something that, you know, anytime you put in a song, someone's gonna feel, you know what I mean? The good thing about being vulnerable is it also allows you to experience where you are. That's the tool that I use. But yeah, music is, like I said, it's infinite, you know what I mean? So there's always new approaches. You know, I definitely keep my finger on the pulse of, you know, producers outside of like who are on the Billboard charts, you know what I'm saying? So music is an ever evolving thing for me. And also too, you know, just on the production side, like I was telling you, you know, I was getting prepared for my tour and, you know, I would have a pianist come out and, you know, show me some new ways. Music has so much depth, you know what I mean? So because it does, it's almost something that never gets old. And, you know, I always, because a lot of people like to compare sports to music, like it's this thing that you can get old at, but it's actually something you can get better at as long as you keep your physical health. And I always correlate to LeBron James because, you know, we're born in the same year. He's 84. And I always say there's something special about the 80s babies moving into the 90s because, you know, we were coming out that analog era, you know, into the digital era. And, you know, it is almost kept us young. It has almost allowed us to, you know, go a little bit further, you know, than, you know, we're used to seeing with some basketball players or some, you know, sports people or musicians. It's like, y'all, I'm still growing. I'm still discovering things about myself because, you know, once I, you know, come to understand how dope Stevie was, he was always dope to me. I never got to see him grow, you know, but now it's like, you know, you can literally watch people get better. And I think that that's something special and unique. And that's why I'm so happy that, you know, music chose me and I chose music as a profession because it's literally something that you do not have to get old in. It's something that you can constantly get better at. So I'm looking forward to that as a musician, you know, with picking up, diving more into the piano, with picking up a guitar. Like there's no limit. I could be 70 and just picked up the flute. You know what I mean? And
Well, Andre 3000.
I'm just saying.
You could.
You know, and
He
I
rips
think
it.
I'm just saying that, and that's a powerful thing because, you know, sometimes with our gifts, you know, we feel like we could become jaded. We could become
Yeah.
people that's just like, oh, I did that already for 20 years. And it's just like, no, there's more.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy, you know, that I get to still explore and renew my palette and find different ways to tell stories within my music. And I don't have to get old. I don't have to get old. Who even invented that word? You know what I mean? Like I can still grow and mature in my passion and what it is that I love to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's no way you could keep the passion alive for something when you're not, when you don't have that vulnerability, like that as a tool, as a
Yeah.
means to share your real-time experience, because
Yeah.
we all want our stuff to be received well, right?
Of
Like
course.
we always want it to be impactful in the world. And I feel like, and I'd love to hear your take on this, the best way to do that, to have things that really impact people, is for it to be real for you first and foremost.
Period.
And like actually find that area, that genre, that tone,
Yeah.
that new lyrical exploration that feels really true and alive for you.
Yeah.
How have you like stayed true to not just what is going to be maybe perceived or received successfully,
Yeah.
but like being okay with the fact that something might not be received as well, but it's more real for you, you know,
Yeah.
it's more true for you. And that's a different version of what it means to be successful in a way.
Yeah. I would say that I have you know, like if there was a pot, you know what I'm saying, and you know, you want to cook something up for everybody, you know, you have to be aware of all the genres, the food genres, you know what I'm saying? You know, and then you got to know who your audience is.
Yeah.
You know
Some
what I'm
people
saying?
don't like Asian food. You know?
Yeah, you know, or some people might not like Mexican food.
Right.
You know what I mean? They might like Brazilian food. You know what I mean? So you have to really know your audience, and then also you just have to have a little consideration. And I think that, you know, as it correlates to food, you have to know who you're serving. You know, you can't serve up meat to vegetarians. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's kind of like been that thing that, you know, allows me to constantly cook different dishes and also explore the different, you know, seasonings or seasons. Yeah. You know, the different palettes, you know what I'm saying? Like to have an appreciation, you know, for it is, you know, to be well-traveled, to have a, you know, a well-traveled palate, you know what I'm saying? So I always consider those things when I'm creating things and or recreating things, and also looking at things that allow me to dive in deep and see why, you know, that's a thing for other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, I might not like that thing, but why is it a thing for you? You know, and it's like, oh, okay. So I do my due diligence, and you know, I make sure that, you know, I'm always coming from a truthful place, because people can feel that. You know, people can feel, you know, when it's not authentic. And also, I'm smart enough to recognize and realize that, you know, times are different from before. You know, you can literally do an audience segmentation, you know, on the people that like what you like and see why they like what, you know, you like. So it's like, do your due diligence. You know what I'm saying? Like, really do your research and figure out, like, why is it that you like what you like, and how do you really want to show up? And I'm always intentional in my art that way, having consideration for the person that will receive it, and also having consideration for myself to be authentic, because that's something that you can't, I don't want to say it's not something that you can't buy, but it's something that you should sell. You should sell your authentic self. You know, you shouldn't just do something that is popular or something that is, it's like, it don't hit the same when it's not authentic. And I understood that very early on in my career, that if it's not coming from me, it's probably not going to work as good as I think that it should. Sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes there's projects that I've taken on that are, you know, like maybe I saw it one way and then it happened another way. You still got to look at that as, you know, fulfillment, with understanding that, you know, you needed to extract certain things from it. And also you needed more context. You needed more experience, you know, in your experience. Yeah. You know, everything is not going to just fit inside of this box, you know? So, yeah.
I can imagine being a dancer. I mean, really most dancers I've met, like they're just really connected to themselves and their body, you know, that they're better at listening to that internal process, you know, and that's got to be such an amazing help in regards to all of that. I'm just curious, as like making music, making art is one thing, and there's a lot of incredible artists out there in music and painting and podcasting is its own art. There's so many infinite ways to creatively express yourself. most people don't realize and often struggle with the business side of the thing because
Mhm.
marketing, the business, the selling of it
Yeah.
is a whole different completely skill set that we're not taught, you know?
Yeah.
And so as you started coming into the business so young, I'm just curious how you've come to see the business side of music and making art, and also how you've dealt with feeling maybe being taken advantage of at times.
Yeah. That's what really shifted my focus and my intention when it came to the importance of being in contact with that as a creative. You got to handle your business in this business. This business is the most unlike business. You know what I'm saying? And it's a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? That are in positions. And I had to pay for a lot of those lessons. You know, being misrepresented, and understanding how, it is important that I am represented in the way that I truly want to be represented, because, you know, misrepresentation is just it rarely gets you in a powerful position. So once I started coming into the understanding of the importance of it, I really started taking a closer look. And then also, like, being taken advantage of, it doesn't feel good at any corner. You know what I'm saying? Like, buying a pack of annihilators and somebody's like, $5. You're gonna be like, wait, man, hold up. I know this don't cost that much. You know what I mean? It kind of interestingly, helps you focus on, your integrity. You know what I mean? Because you still want to be able to protect yourself, but you also want to stand for something. You know what I mean? Like, are you just going to get ripped off because people are ripping people off? Or are you going to try to change something about it? So having the maybe not so business savvy and having to learn those lessons, not having anybody in my family to help me understand the importance of managing my finances, working so hard for something, getting all of this money, and then looking up and then it's not there anymore. Those were some hard lessons. And then also too, understanding that, like, you can start certain trends. You can motivate people and then not get credit. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, is it about credit or is it about acknowledgement? You know what I mean? And then being okay with the simple fact that maybe you motivated someone and, that was a wonderful thing. And maybe, you want to get some type of acknowledgement. Why do you want to get that acknowledgement? Going through all of that, what I mean? Inspiring people, being okay with maybe not getting credit, but understanding that comes with the purpose. That comes with sometimes, you give. It's not about people seeing you give, and then understanding the power of that, understanding how even people can manipulate the power of being seen giving. Is that truly giving? You know what I mean? So business has done that number on me to help me understand the importance of, patents, really wanting to be acknowledged, handling your business, and that being an important tool in this business. So yeah, man, I learned all my great lessons and I'm still learning, you know what I mean? But I would encourage, everyone, whatever field that you're in, do your due diligence and make sure that you know how to handle your business. And I would also encourage people to be their own boss. And I know that there's a lot of rhetoric and conversation about ownership, but what I really love about ownership is ownership holds you accountable. You know what I mean? Unlike working for someone else, you know what I'm saying? Maybe your boss holds you accountable, but if you're your own boss, you have to hold yourself accountable. You know what I'm saying? And it's something powerful about that when you're able to take responsibility. And that's something else that I saw in my business that I wasn't doing. As an artist and as a creative, I wasn't taking full responsibility of how I wanted things to be, the outcomes. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, how could you, want this maybe material thing, you know what I mean, if your business is not being handled. You want a house, you want a particular house, you want things to look a certain type of way. It's like, well, you need to take some more responsibility. You need to look at your finances. You need to look at how much you're spending weekly and monthly. You need to figure out how to get that number up. Being independent has really shown me the importance of taking accountability within my art. And I love that for me. I love that for me. More artists should take accountability.
I really feel that there's an infinite, just as many people there are paths to discovering who we are, and being in the world of actively being on the stages and creating music and creating art,
Hmm.
and the business side of things. Like, these are all paths to declare who you want to be. And you're often going to get tested, I feel like, so frequently in life to see if you're going to actively show up as the person you say you want to be and that you
Yeah.
declare you are.
Yeah.
And those adversities and challenges and tests come in many different forms.
Yeah.
And I know that the controversy and complications with B2K, with your ex, those were really trying times for you to show up as the person
Yeah.
you say you want to be.
Straight up.
And so if you just want to reflect on that time a little bit and how you were able to stay in alignment with who you wanted to be and not regress back into, what would have been easy to react to in a
Yeah.
negative way.
Yeah, man, that time was really tough for me. Having to go to the courthouse, you know what I'm saying, but to also still be a present dad, you know what I mean? To anytime you help people, anytime you do, you do things for people, and then somehow you become the villain in their story, you just scratch your head and you just be like, but that wasn't my intention. And then also to be able to just see where you can improve so things like that don't happen. I could go on and on, about how, those times in the moment didn't feel good, but how it really transformed me, motivated me, and made me a better person, a better father, a better entertainer, a better businessman. It even inspired me to write a book. It's like, I can't really be mad, I can't really be upset. I just have to be able to appreciate that my path and my journey is different from others. And what I've come to really truly recognize is that, a lot of the time we feel that life is dealing us this type of bad hand, or, when we go through situations that are like unfavorable, we always feel like, oh man, why is this happening? Or, but if you look a little bit closer, and you extract exactly what you need to extract, you'll be able to appreciate those moments, because what is life without them? If everything was just a straight line, it would just be a boring story. If it was a movie, it was a boring story. Your life was boring.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
also,
mean?
if it all happened the way you wanted it to happen, would also be boring.
Facts. And it's just like, really arriving at spirituality. And, spirituality is just magical. You know what I mean? It's just the way that things happen for you, the timing really be on another level.
Synchronicities.
Yes. And just how you're able to think about one thing, and then, it could really be just become reality, reflecting on those times, and just really recognizing my headspace and knowing that it would be okay, has really given me a deeper understanding, sense of purpose, and also an appreciation for my experience. So I wouldn't take nothing back. Even though in those moments, I may have felt embarrassed. I mean, I did. Countless amount of times where I was just like, I wanted to respond, get some monetary gain, whooping somebody's ass, would definitely have fulfilled that for me. You know what I mean? But, being able to take that bird's eye view and be able to be like, is that the best move? Well, if I do that, that might oh, okay, you know what? Know thyself. Know thyself. What do you really want? Oh, you know, what kind of outcome? Well, if you did that, then that might affect that. And then this could happen. But if you do this, oh, you're in the clear. It's all up to you. And I'm like, oh, you're right. To be able to go through those experiences, to realize, how easy it is to be violent, you know what I'm saying? Or to do something, again, that maybe feels, like, well, I got my lick back. You know what I mean? It's just like, grow up, man. You know what I mean? Um, Shift your perspective, change, realize where other people are, and know they can't really touch you. I really love Bashar, and a lot of his perspectives, when it comes to, how he thinks and how you can really just take on certain things that really aren't productive for you, and not helpful to you, to your soul, to your spirit, to your energy, So I definitely appreciate the things that I went through, but I am now, in a space where, you know, if something is happening adverse, then, we acknowledge it, we take it in stride and we move on. You know what I mean? So I would encourage everyone to just, if you're going through something and, at that particular time it may seem unfavorable and you're embarrassed and, you want to just go in the house and crawl up under you know, um, a sheet, you know what I mean? Like, you could do that, but don't stay there too long. You know what I'm saying? Don't stay there too long. Move around, do something different, try something new.
Yeah, I think those moments where you're really tested and you want to have retribution or vengeance that
Yeah.
can feel like good in the moment, but then it's bitter later on.
Yep.
Taking the higher road is often just that in reverse. It's bitter in the moment,
Yeah.
taking the higher road,
Yep.
but then it's sweet later on, And it's like,
Yeah.
which one do you want to, where do you want to feel the pain? And,
Yeah.
the pain that comes from acting unconsciously hurts way more,
Facts.
And it's more long lasting.
Fact.
And so when looking at forgiveness really, which is often like self-forgiveness is really where it kind of comes to, where it's
Yeah.
like we're all doing the best with the level of awareness that we have. And it's really hard to judge and actually understand something at the same time.
Yeah.
Like if we understand people's conditioning of how they learn love,
Yeah.
then we would have a lot more compassion for the missteps they did that we were often on the other end of, and
Yeah.
it doesn't sometimes always take the pain away of like the circumstance that's difficult, but it does take the edge off of, saying somebody maybe learned love to be conditioned chaos,
Yeah.
and not everybody's privileged to like learn love in a holistic kind of unconditional fashion,
That's true.
And so how have you learned to see the pain behind someone's actions and not just the action on the surface that you're a victim of, but kind of really becoming wise and seeing that people are hurt people in many ways,
Facts. Yeah. That was a very important lesson to my growth, to be able to recognize that people can only do, what they have the capacity to do. And a lot of the times, people are coming from, a lack of knowledge, a lack of self-love, lack of understanding, and not taking things personal has really allowed me to be unbothered. It's kept me in that energy, it's kept me in that space, to maybe, not hold certain people to, a judgment that they can't even fathom. But understanding, that when we come in contact with people, when we come in contact with certain experiences, it's really trying to tell us something about ourselves. And when we're able to kind of like, okay, wait a minute, let me do some back search. And I really came into understanding this when I had my kids, because once I had, kids with the mother of my children, I started understanding her background and understanding where she come from, and those things where she kind of felt in disposition, of, and same within myself. I mean, my thought process and how I would handle certain situations. So having that knowledge really gave me a different sense of discernment and understanding. Again, people can only do what they know. So then it becomes a responsibility of if we want to tell them or not, or if we want to see if they have the capacity to see where they may, can have room for improvement, because there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
But maturing, and being able to sit back and say, oh, that's why that person did that. Oh, I get it. Oh, he's never had another. Oh, she think like that because, oh, wow, she didn't get love. She didn't, have friends. She's out here by herself. You know what I mean? How else is she supposed to respond to that? You know what I mean? This is an opportunity, actually, for me to be able to communicate and exercise what it is that I know. Maybe that's not received, but at least I tried. You know what I mean? All of these things are important, when we want to have a greater understanding of ourselves. And I feel like, understanding that has been a powerful tool for me to maintain my emotions and not, I guess, take things so personal. When you're smart enough to recognize, like, people only work within their own capacity, and that's it, unless they want to learn something else. So
It's so easy. There's that, that saying of what is often wrongly attributed to malice or bad intention could be explained with just ignorance.
Yeah.
We just don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And we got to be on the receiving end of our own ignorance. They're going to have to deal with those repercussions and
Yeah.
consequences for the rest of their life. So
Yeah.
that's kind of karma in its own way. And life does it. Life takes care of that in so many different ways. And
Oh my goodness. In some crazy ways too.
yeah.
So you got to be careful, y'all. You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure you putting good energy out there, because it will come back to you.
Yeah. And that gives you the opportunity to like purify yourself in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
to build that good karma,
Exactly.
And, man, there's this track from Kendrick that I really love, Mother I Sober. Man, it's so poetic and beautiful in how it explains and shares his own process with taking accountability and stopping the generational trauma that you experience,
Yeah.
And it takes somebody that's big that can take that accountability and responsibility to what's often uncomfortable, which is like exploring your own shadow material and seeing where you haven't shown up in integrity and alignment.
Yeah.
But then when you do that work that's difficult, then you stop passing it on to your kids, and you start to really change the trajectory of your bloodline.
That's fact.
And that's a big responsibility. And I think that as maybe we start to head towards, wrapping up this podcast, I think it's just important to invite us all to just start where we're at, because it can get quite overwhelming when you look at like all of this from above. But when we all can become aware of where are the little things in my life that I can make more in alignment, that I can tweak and take actions that's going to be more in integrity and whatnot. And you start to build momentum towards the positive, just like you can spiral down and have bad habits that affect your state of mind, that make you have worse decisions.
Yeah.
You can also see the progress of growth, of like feeling better in your body, feeling better in your mind, seeing progress in the gym. You start to make more actions in alignment with more life.
Yeah.
And so any invitations or like kind of thoughts you have on just starting where we're at and how we can all just take one step in the direction we want to move in.
Yeah, starting where you are is the best thing you can do. Taking a look around, taking a look at what you would like to cultivate for your life, in a positive way. Starting where you are is, I would say, definitely have some goals, but starting where you are keeps you in alignment and awareness of self, and not always, like, I guess, say, overreaching or, trying to model yourself after someone else's path, because a lot of people do that too. A lot of people see, you know, um, oh, this person is here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be there. You know what I mean? When it's really like, no, you have your own place. So yeah, I would just add, find some practices, find some things that motivate you. One of the things that helped me transform was riding my bike. It was like a childhood joy that came back that became, like an adult pleasure. You know what I'm saying? Because whenever we're riding, when we're riding in a car, or if we're riding a bike, there's this like thing that happens that allows you to meditate, and it's almost like you are where you are because you're obviously using your body and your legs, or you're driving, you know what I mean? But it allows you to kind of just, break down, some things. I call it shadow work. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do your shadow work in order to really peel back those layers for yourself to start where you are. So yeah, that's what I would add. Do your shadow work. Like, who are you when you're mad? Who is that? Inner voice. What? How does your gut sound? When it's telling you shouldn't be eating that. You know what I'm saying? Other than the sound. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, um, yeah, tap in with yourself. Tap in with yourself. Get to know yourself. Know thyself.
I love it. We got to like have somebody's got to edit a chop up together all the guests saying that into
Yeah,
some sort of
that would
thing.
be dope.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, know thyself.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
it, bro. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience that's on your mind or heart today?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for, doing this work, you know what I mean? Because it is work, you know what I mean? And being able to have this place for people that are searching, for more within themselves and more from the world, you know what I mean? Because this is a shared experience. I always tell people that, yeah, of course you come here alone, you know what I mean? But not really, you came from somewhere, where it was energy there, you know what I mean? So we're always all together, you know what I mean? So, put forth what you want. And I would just again encourage people to put together, a daily program. This is what's really helped me transform and keep myself accountable. And maintain my own peace and happiness, because it is not the world. It's not the world's job. It's not your friend's job. It's not your mama's job. It's not no one else's job but you to maintain your own peace and happiness. And when we all take accountability and responsibility for that, like, we really can see how beautiful this life experience, this shared life experience can be. Because I've met so many amazing people, even like yourself, you know what I'm saying? Like, our work, our spirituality is what has gotten us into contact with each other, you know what I'm saying? Not us being in the same place. This place is invisible. This energy is invisible, but it's all around us, you know what I mean? So I'm always, in honor and in appreciation of that. You know what I'm saying? That my experience has carried me and got me into contact with people that, like, we all in a space where we're exploring this journey, you know what I'm saying? And if we could help each other, why not? You know what I mean? So thank you for doing, this work, man, and allowing me to be able to express my unique experience and to share with your viewers. And, it's a journey, and let's enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Honestly, blown away. Like, digging into your book, which is Unbothered. People can check out. We'll link stuff in the description below. But like, just getting more into your work and seeing, obviously, your art is so well received and so prolific in the world, and it's amazing. But the man that's behind it is equally as amazing,
Thank
and
you,
it's
man.
really cool to see you just share as a man with so much vulnerability and authenticity, and I can see the sincerity of you being on your path. And it's an honor and such a gift for me to like have this podcast for just the people that I meet and the threads of connection.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it, and it's such a pleasure to have a new brother now. And
Come on, man.
yeah, man.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Thank you, bro.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
you. And anything else you want to plug or share before we wrap up, or what you got going on or anything?
I just want to say, know thyself. Yeah, no, we good, man. Thank you.
Beautiful, bro. All right. Everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Know Thyself podcast. Let us know how this episode uniquely impacted you. I absolutely loved it. Having a blast. And until next time, be well. Take care.